Nonetheless, I'm going to talk to you about leadership. I talk about selling, but I'm not going to talk much about selling, and I promise you a couple things. One, this is going to be about you as a leader and you of how you get the most out of your teams. And it's not going to be about Carew or me or anything else like that. It's really about us. And that's where I kind of want to start with. And if you think about leadership, and we've heard a lot about AI, we've heard a lot about so many different things, but a lot of the things I'm going to talk about are tried and true right back to leadership, because AI can do a lot of things, but what it can't do is connect with people's hearts sometimes. And it can't connect with their guttural instincts. It can affect our intelligence, it can make us better, it can do all those things, but at the end of the day, we still have people. And people are going to be critical to our success. Now, I'll tell you from a selling perspective, and this will be the selling portion of it, there's going to be a whole lot fewer salespeople into the future. But here's the beauty of that. They're going to make a whole lot more money because they're going to be really good at what they do. And from a leadership perspective, we kind of have to change our dynamic. And how we have to change our dynamic is right now kind of where we are right now with me speaking with you. Is I'm up on this stage and I'm in a different place than what you are. And a lot of times leaders think that when they get that position, it's an accomplishment. Hey, I've done something. But in reality, what we have to do as leaders is be with them. We have to be off of the stage, off of that position, and connecting with people in a way that makes a difference. And this came from Tom Peters 1,000 years ago. And today, I think it's even more true than ever. Because what do we have? We have a whole bunch of people who, I'm going to sound like the old guy, and the way Joe explained it, I am old, but like the guy talking about gas prices when they were $1 a gallon, and in reality, I can remember when they were less than $1. You begin to sound old. But the reality is when you start thinking about these things, of how we accomplish things and what we do, it is not an accomplishment. Leadership is not an accomplishment. Leadership is truly a gift that we now have to give to others. So one of the things I always like to talk to people about is, what is your likability factor? And if you think about my first slide, if we think of the leadership as an accomplishment, that position is an accomplishment, what does that almost automatically do? What does it do to our likability factor? Getting a promotion generally reduces your likability factor. Because the people who didn't get the promotion, guess what? They aren't so happy with you. So you have to ask yourself, what is your likability factor, and how do I improve that? You've all heard of the Q score. In advertising and marketing, there's a thing called the Q score. It's like, what's your Q score inside your own organization? And sometimes you have to ask yourself that. And there's a great book out. I'm not a big pusher of books, but if you've not read the book Think Again by Adam Grant, I highly recommend you do that. I mean, there's some great books out there, but Think Again by Adam Grant is an incredible book. And it's something that this quote came from that. If you want to be smarter and more likable, admit that you don't know everything. And that's the first key of leadership and communication is, I don't know everything. So we were talking about AI, and a little quiz for you here. Does anyone know who the Les Horribles cornets are? Other than that was the first image, and I noticed somebody quoted the internship. The first image on the line, or the WWW, or the internet in 1992. That was the first image that was broadcast across the World Wide Web. And it's from a Swiss company, and these are employees of this company who were doing a send-up of a band, and one of the guys who was on the WWW decides he's going to send this out, and so this is the first thing. Now you think about that was 31 years ago. Okay, 31 years ago, that was it. Well, some of you aren't 31 years old, but literally in the world, you think about it and go, that was 31 years ago. That's the best I could come up with. And we've just spent 2 days talking about AI 31 years later. and what it's going to do for us and how it can make our lives better. And I'm kind of a person who looks at it, and on kind of a lark, I created this little icon here, and I posted it on LinkedIn. You see, I post quite a bit of stuff on LinkedIn. Now, the artificial intelligence crazy, that's me. I came up with that. And then I came up with bringing sanity to insanity. But I just said, I'm going to use AI, and I'm going to ask AI, what would you create for a logo generator if I told you I thought artificial intelligence was crazy? And that's what they came up with. So that's an AI-generated logo. I posted this with a little bit of thing on LinkedIn. It got over 1,000 impressions in less than 24 hours. Nothing I've posted has ever gotten 1,000 impressions. I'm not going to lie. So, but we're talking about this AI, and we're AI crazy, but it's like, I'm going to talk about how does technology impact your culture and your leadership? Because you have to be asking yourself that question of how is AI, how is technology going to impact my leadership style, my culture of my company? Because culture is everything. If you don't think the culture of your company is not important, whether you're in it, delivering it, creating it, you're nuts. Joe mentioned, kind of my corporate experience. I had a really cool opportunity for about 3 years. So obviously COVID, I've been with Carew as the owner for quite some time. COVID changed our world like everyone else's quite a bit. So in order to save my company, I actually took a job as the CEO of another company because I wanted my team to be able to do their thing and be successful. So I took a job as a CEO of a company, privately held company, about $200 million, called Graceland Fruit. And the culture was totally broken. I walked in and it was like, this company may not make it financially. So I walked in and I started doing all the things that, guess what, we talk about in this little session. I started doing that. I started connecting with people who make dried fruit. Now, you want a tough job, and there's not a person here. I was talking with Brenna, my marketing director here, and Brenna used to work there with me. You want a tough job? Go stare at dried cherries, blueberries, and cranberries moving along a conveyor belt at about that fast, trying to find things that may be imperfections in it. You wouldn't do that job for $100 an hour. But yet people are doing that job for $15 an hour. And they hated their job. They hated the culture. Everything about it was terrible. So what I did is, frankly, got down on the floor with them. Every night before I left, I'd go spend an hour on the floor, just chatting. I'd do the job occasionally, stuff like that. And it's amazing what happened to the culture. And it wasn't technology, it wasn't AI, it was just connecting with people at a visceral level. And that's the important thing. AI and technology is going to give us a lot of things that are going to help us. But the reality is we still have to connect with people at that visceral level. And that's the impact it's going to have. And if you think, literally, what happened in the last 31 years is kind of like discovering fire. If you think back to, my friend SpongeBob, and in terms of, what happened when they discovered fire? It changed the world. It changed human. AI is in that same position, and it's done that in 31 years. So how are we going to make sure that we, as leaders, stay connected? And so this is going to have some of the biggest impact on your company's performance, and ultimately yours is how you lead. And that's going to be critical. So I'm going to ask you a question. What do you think right now today, and you don't have to read a whole lot to know that there's a lot of discussion about culture in companies and that it's really changing, not necessarily for the better. What do you think the largest contributors are to the decline in culture inside of organizations? And you don't have to speak for your own, just what you see. Just curious. What do you see some of the issues causing that? Pardon? Lousy bosses, thank you. Why are they lousy? They don't understand culture, thank you. Other things that you can see. Lack of connection. Lack of empathy. Pardon? Cheap pay. Greed. All those things are very active today. You don't have to go read the Wall Street Journal to look at what, I live in Cincinnati. The CEO of P&G is going to make $22 million. No offense, he's a nice guy. I don't know him personally. I'm certain he's a nice guy. But is he really worth $22 million? No. And so you kind of start thinking about that. It's like, but more importantly is what's happening is all those things, it's unification of purpose. Why are we doing these things? Why are we doing what we're doing? Yesterday, somebody had up here, I think it was Paul from Deloitte, basically was talking about strategy implementation. And I think the number he had was 10% of strategy implementations are successful. I would tell you that most reasons strategy is not successful is not because of its bad strategy, it's because it's terrible communication. No one knows in how to align around the strategy. Why? Because no one's communicating it. So I ask yourself a simple question. What do your relationships inside of your organizations with your boss or your team or team members around you inside the organization, does it look something like this where it's an equal? Or does it look something like this, where someone wants to have the power and control and everyone else is getting the fuzzy end of the lollipop? Ask yourself that. And there are 4 components to this. And the gentleman who said lousy boss, I'd ask him this. Do these 4 critical components of leadership happen within your organization? Is there trust? Is there credibility? Is there rapport? And is there respect? And I would tell you, if you don't have those 4, you have none of them. And if you don't have a relationship with your team that looks like an equal, interdependent relationship, you're kind of walking down the bad path. And here are some behaviors that are important. I'm going to talk about each one of these a little bit, but I would basically tell you, look at how they interact, how much judgmentalness is in there, how much hostility is in there when there's employee interaction, even with the boss to the associates or with the associates amongst each other. It used to be a joke. I used to have a slide about 10 years ago or 15 years ago when I started doing these things with Gerhardt and Selling Power. I had my cap. There was a cartoon I had that said, "I have my cap locks on. I'm ready to argue." And how many of you, now I think fewer people actually send all capital emails, I hope. But that was it. It's like, I'm going to show my hostility or my judgmentalness is, I'm just going to hit the cap locks and type in all capital letters. So you know how important my message is. Those are things you have to do. Then we want to look at engagement behaviors. And I'm going to talk about this model over here, which is listen, acknowledge, explore, and respond, and what those mean from a leadership perspective. Here are some judgmental attributes. And these slides will be available, I think, on the website. And for those of you in the virtual world, if you have questions, I'm going to leave a little time for questions. Please use the chat box to ask questions, and I'm certain someone will get it to me. And I forgot to say thank you for watching virtually. But things like insisting, telling, dictating, directing, manipulative questions, and people always ask me, what does a manipulative question look like? It looks like a question of, I want you to give me the answer I already know. Very simple process. Then let's look at hostility. Whoops. What do hostile things look like? And it becomes arguing, it's implying. And of course, the last but not least is what I like to always make a little joke about, is the punitive probe. And everyone wonders, what's a punitive probe? And in business, everyone knows, probably can figure out a punitive probe. In real life, a punitive probe is a question that sounds something like this. You're not going to wear that, are you? That would be a punitive probe. So what happens in both of these, I'll go back here for a second, when you're using judgmentalists, you give your team the feeling of being parented. They can't make decisions on their own. They can't move forward, and they're dependent on you because you like this. In hostile things, it makes confusion, anger, all those things come to pass. None of them good. None of us like these feelings. We've got another problem. And it's not a problem, but you think these, right now, we effectively have kind of the silent generation, boomers, Gen X's, millennials, Gen Z, millennials also known as Gen Y, Gen Alpha. If you think about the workforce right now, we have all of those not crossed off except obviously Gen Alpha we're dealing with. Think about those of us who fall into the Gen X or boomer generation. How many times have you found yourself thinking, and by the way, the people I'm talking about are thinking exactly the same way about you. So this isn't a one-way street. This is a track that goes both in directions. As you go, what are they thinking? How do they come to this conclusion? I've been doing this forever, and they don't understand. And they're looking at you going, boy, I wish this person would certainly decide to retire because they have no clue what's going on. They're talking about gas prices when they were under $1. The hell is that? But the reality is with this cross-generational, literally leadership is now one size fits none. And I would tell you when you go to the greatest generation, the silents and the boomers, when they were in the workforce and some of the Gen X's, there was a lot of similarities. So bosses and leaders could be bosses. It's like we are patterned to think a certain way. Well, with all the things that have happened in the last 31 years, no one's patterned to think in any way, shape, or form the same. We all experience things differently. And we've talked about experience the last day and a half. Ask yourself this. We talk about customer engagement. How are customers engaging with us? Well, I'm going to challenge you is how are your customers as a leader, how are you engaging with them? Meaning your customers being not the people who are buying from you, but the people inside your organization. Very different. So think about how do you have to adjust your style to do that? So how do you become this cross-generational, multi-generational, how do you all coexist, or how do we all coexist? And the answer is simply engagement. And some of the things I loved hearing, empathy, those types of things are all ways of engaging. So I'm going to ask you a couple things, or challenge you to say, how are you engaging your team at an EQ level, realizing you're in multi-generations? Because guess what? Not everyone connects the same. So how are you as a leader making sure you're engaging your team? What do you know about your team? What do you know personally about anyone on your team? One of the things I like to do when we first bring somebody in or I get a chance to meet somebody, first question I ask them is, tell me something about you that no one else knows. I know a little known fact. Give me a little known fact about yourself. Number one, you're shocked at what you hear sometimes, but you're also amazed because what happens is people start opening up to you in a way that's different. So, simple thing like that. Conversation, 10% of the strategy works. Why? There's no connection to the strategy in me. There's no connection to what I need to do and how this connects to the greater good. The other thing I like to ask people is, are you promoting a culture that you'd be a member of? If you were flipped, would you enjoy the work environment? Is that how you'd want to be led? Is that how you want to be led? Or are you trickling things down because that's what's coming from the head shed, and so that's the way we want to do it? You have the ability to change course. It doesn't have to be, excuse my language, shit flows downhill. It can be, I can stop that and change the narrative. And then, what's the mindset? And Gerhardt talked about this a little bit. Like him, I could talk for days about mindset. And I was very privileged when he first started talking about mindset. I was one of the first people to help engage with him on that and learn so much. And I can tell you, what is the mindset of a leader? Is it about being for the team, success of the team, we're going to wake up and every day we're going to be better? Or is it, I got a whole bunch of people who don't know what the heck they're doing, and I just wish I could find better people? I mean, we've all heard that how many millions of times? Well, if I could just get better people. Well, whose responsible is it to create better people? It's ours as leaders. But that cultural mindset is important to how I'm going to do it. And here's one of the ways to do it. It's a simple process we've created many years ago called the layer bonding process, which is listen, acknowledge, explore, and respond. And what most bosses love to do is listen and respond. Or more importantly, listen and tell. Heard what you said, tell you what to do. Go. That's where the problem comes in. So the biggest thing about leadership and moving forward is how do I really stop that LR process and get into an LAE process, which is how do I listen, how do I explore, and how do I better understand what's going on? Why is my team performing? Why is my team underperforming? Why are you underperforming? Why are we underperforming? Do you understand why we're all connected in this and what we're trying to do? And I can almost guarantee you, you start asking those questions, the first thing you're going to hear is, I don't understand. So whose job is it to help them? That's ours as a leader. Then we can appropriately respond where necessary, without judgmentalness, without hostility, without all those things. So over the course of the last several years, I've started to kind of play around with this a little bit and basically called it the B's of leadership. And I wish I had time to go through each one of these, but one of the things is you've got to be bold. And being bold isn't being crazy, it's being out there, being energetic, being connected to people. You have to be positive energy. That's mindset. If you come in realizing that this team is not what you want it to be, guess what that mindset is to them? We're not. We're good, but he really doesn't like us. Be positive attitude. Be why, not how. That LR, what do bosses love to do? People ask questions, not why are you asking that question? We become, here's how you do it. Here's how you fix you. Go do these things. So be why, not how. Be passionate about your team. Be passionate about yourself. Be asking for input. Be timely in decisions. The number one factor we see in our research of why people don't connect with their bosses is bosses and leaders take too much time to make decisions. There's a philosophy, it's pretty simple about decision making. You can do the right thing and it works out, everyone's happy, right? You can do the wrong thing, but you're doing it with the best information you have, and you try to do it, and most of the time you can fix it. Because you can have an honest explanation. This is the data I had. This is the information I had. I clearly didn't have all the information. Next time I need to do a better job of understanding before I give it, and we can fix it. The worst thing you can do is do nothing, or delay, or sit on it. That basically tells people you don't really care enough to make a decision, or you're incapable of making a decision. One of the fastest growing LinkedIn groups that I just joined recently is on mental health and mental well-being inside of workplaces. I mean, how many places do you see lawsuits now? And I just saw it in the Wall Street Journal, and the name of the company is escaping me, but they're being sued because one of their employees committed suicide in the family setting, suing them for a toxic work environment and created suicide. Well-being of your team, critical. Mental well-being. That's where that energy comes into play. A last one is, when you promote the wrong people, you begin to lose your best people. When you promote the wrong people, your best people will leave. Your team knows who's underperforming to this day, and they wonder why you aren't doing anything about it. We've all seen it. We've been in the corporate America world for a long time. When someone winds up getting, escorted by human resources out the door, what's the typical refrain? It's about time. It's about time. Thanks for catching up. So those are the things to kind of remember. And lastly, one of the things is excellence is never an accident. It's not. People aren't natural leaders. People aren't things that make a difference. Excellence is something that takes practice. It takes engagement. It takes all these things that are important. So my only piece of this is I'm going to tell you this. I think you should invest in yourselves, whether it's with me or some of the other fine organizations out there. You've seen the people from Value Selling, you've seen the people from Janik. All those things are about investing in themselves. I'm going to tell you, invest in yourself as a leader, and how I'm going to help you do it. So we've got a little program coming up, a virtual program. My only commercial, November 7th through the 9th. I'm going to give you $500 off. If you scan that right now, you can take it, and we'll make sure you get that, and that's up to you. And it's because I want you to invest in yourself. So just let us know that. With that, my time is done here. They're about to, give me the Bugs Bunny hook. I thank you for your time, thank you for your energy, and go out and be great leaders. That's my only challenge to you. Have a great day.